Anyway, and I wasn't sure about doing this, but can you hear me? But I did think about this occasion, and I realized that there were some things I did want to say. And the first relates to the name of the area, which is quite a mouthful. As Elizabeth was the third in her maternal line to hold that name, it was predictable that there would be nicknames. Her mother's letters were frequently addressed to Dear Ifabit, which I suspect was Elizabeth's earliest attempt to say her own name. Snooklets was used by her dad until he received a polite request from his daughter to revert to Elizabeth when she left for boarding school at 15. Her siblings called her Sis, and so occasionally did her father. And in high school and in Connecticut College, her last name morphed to Babby and then to Babs. Meanwhile, her young cousins came up with Whiz Biz, which nicely encompassed her considerable energy. As a member of the staff when she taught in Japan, she was called Babs-san, and sometimes Typhoon Babs. Again, a reference to her energy and to the fact that there had been a Typhoon Babs when she moved there. By the time we met, she had become permanently Babs. This unique history offers many possibilities, of course, and the formal name must appear in a designation, but Babby's Grove is an easier to say and much friendlier name. So this is my effort to start that ball rolling, and welcome to Babby's Grove. What did this woman do to merit this special recognition? I would propose that this honor has not so much to do with her accomplishments as with how she lived the 91 years allotted her. She came into the world equipped with a joyous temperament, a generous and loving nature, formidable intelligence, irrepressible energy, and universal curiosity. She was the last of 5 children, born to a pediatrician educator father and a Vassar-educated mother. In another era, her mother would have been the CEO of a major company. Instead, she was a gifted manager of her family, documenting the lives of each of her children, saving their letters, grade cards, and other relevant documents, and returning all these treasures to them as they moved on into their own lives. And this is a note by her mother, which is how I learned about this incident. Her mother wrote, and I quote, 1934. As we were busy packing and getting the rented Reynolds house ready to leave at the end of summer, I heard Elizabeth's voice calling from the stair landing. Mommy, I have a favor to ask you. What is it? It's a big favor. What is it? I spilled mercurochrome all over the carpet in your room. I explained that we were responsible for Mrs. Nichols' things and that we would have to get a new carpet. That night, I found the enclosed envelope on my pillow. That's the end of the quote. Clipped to the mother's note was a small brown envelope with a child's printing, which read, "This all I have, but maybe," spelled M-A-B-E, "will do a very, very little for the carpet." The verys were emphasized. And inside, the envelope held 4 pennies. Oh. Babs had just turned 5 that July. To me, this is a very telling example of an early sense of responsibility, even of integrity. In August of 1935, the family moved to an 86-acre gentleman's farm. There were pigs, cows, sheep, chickens, and for a while even horses. There was a manager who lived on site with his young family. In the lean Depression years, the farm provided for most of the family's needs. When Babs recalled these years in various of her writings, it was a golden childhood. Because I wanted to know what she herself felt was important to include, at my request when she was quite old, in her 80s, Babs wrote an obituary. And she ended it with, "A charmed life, a blessed life, indeed." And if you only know the highlights, that would be the inevitable conclusion. But every life story has challenges, and so it was with Babs. And I want to address some of those challenges today in offering a more balanced account. As her siblings left for boarding school one by one, Babs found herself without ready companions. For her 12th Christmas, she received a small date book in which she faithfully recorded a few lines every day, always starting with comments and comparisons relating to weather, a clear indication of a natural bent toward documentation. She wrote of time spent in the barn working on her inventions, collecting stones, setting muskrat traps and releasing them, fishing with her father, and she saw the chore of collecting eggs with the farm manager. Her diary entries stopped abruptly on April 20th and resumed 7 weeks later. It was on this first unrecorded day that the farm manager raped 12-year-old Babs. She told no one. The violence was buried somewhere deep in her memory, not to surface again until her mid-40s, when she dealt with it. This horrendous betrayal marked the end of her idyllic childhood. There were other, less serious childhood challenges, but nearly all of them in the form of physical issues with her own body, things she could neither anticipate nor avoid. The first of these was a diagnosis of Osgood-Schlatter's disease, which relates to irregular and rapid bone growth, and for which she needed to wear a cast for months during her 12th winter, unable to participate in winter fun when there was an extraordinary 3-foot snowfall that year. The cast came off, but the necessity for orthopedic shoes remained and left her envious with the penny loafers that her friends could wear. She wore those ugly shoes until she went to college. Her adolescence was also not without drama. At George School, a co-ed Quaker boarding school which she attended beginning as a sophomore, Babs played field hockey and basketball and loved it. These pleasures ended when, as a junior, she spent several weeks in a darkened infirmary alone as she recovered from chickenpox. That was the standard method those days. And in compensation, however, she was made team manager for the girls' basketball team. Babs made this position memorable by showing up at each practice and game with a new joke or a funny story to tell. In recognition of her leadership qualities, her classmates elected her to preside over student government in her senior year. And in parallel with her developing leadership skills, Babs' evolving religious beliefs took shape at George School. Among the requirements were mandatory classes on world religions, as well as attendance at bi-weekly Quaker meetings. The latter fostered a habit of self-reflection that remained with her for the rest of her life. Together, these experiences formed a basis for her very deep spirituality, enabling her to create a structure to which she could attach her own singular beliefs. Although Babs did not officially join the Religious Society of Friends, that's Quakers, until 1956, the values learned and lived at George School were fundamental to that decision. Babs loved her years at Connecticut College. Her natural charisma and boundless energy, coupled with a desire to be helpful to others, resulted in many lifelong friendships. And here again, her peers elected her to lead and mentor, and those were honors she discharged with intelligence and kindness. Connecticut College provided Babs with the intellectual foundation for her professional life, and a steadfast devotion to her alma mater was already mentioned by President Bergeron. One of these roles was as Dean of Sophomores, which involved her being a hall mother. And I received this note just a few days ago from one of the 4 women who lived on her hall, who was unable to come because she's recovering from a stroke. And I won't read you all of it, but I will read you what she says about Babs. Every single one of us 4 who lived so near Babs on our college hall saw her as the perfect role model for our lives. She was so smart, so independent, so well-traveled, and so capable. Our earlier role models in the 1940s and early 1950s were nothing like her. And she presented us with a potent image of what a life for a woman in our times could be like. We were in awe of her, and we adored her too. In addition to all her other amazing qualities, Babs was also warm and approachable and so wise. how lucky we were to know her. I feel that way too. Babs loved George Conant was pursuing a doctorate in astrophysics and entered Babs' life when both of them were participating in a Harvard club devoted to the building of a telescope from scratch, grinding their own lenses, all the rest of it. And that was a multi-year endeavor. A casual friendship ensued over many years, and eventually Babs accepted George's proposal. She was 36 when they married, with an understanding that children were not a part of this plan. As George's computer programming skills became well known, relocations were necessary, as were negotiations regarding Babs's professional ambitions. In those pre-roadway, matters became difficult when Babs found herself pregnant at age 43. In those pre-roadway days, several visits with a psychiatrist were required prior to having a legal abortion, which Babs had in early 1972. The marriage floundered, ending in divorce a few years later. Meanwhile, Babs became very active in supporting a woman's right to make decisions for her own body. Those years also included a couple of scares when Babs needed to have a benign breast cyst removed, each requiring a hospital stay and each creating a small cloud of worry. At age 52, more medical issues resulted in a complete hysterectomy. Her body had yet another challenge in store in the form of breast cancer in 2000, which resulted in a mastectomy. And this one was followed a few months later with a second prophylactic mastectomy. At the conclusion of chemotherapy, Babs, a resilient Babs, joined a team of women who paddled a dragon boat as a means of post-cancer support. They called themselves the Hope Chest. Babs wrote the text and narrated a documentary that was made about the team and its members. Of course she did. Babs had presence. When she spoke, people listened. She could banter in small talk as occasions required. She excelled at producing puns. That's a family trait. But her strong preference was for more meaningful exchanges. And she could achieve this with nearly anyone in mere minutes, simply by the power of her intense, focused interest. She was adept at guiding conversations into deep waters, delighting in discussions of philosophical or religious matters. Particularly with spiritual topics, she eagerly explored ideas with an open mind, never attempting to press her point of view as the correct one. She was comfortable with ambiguity. She listened without comment and counseled without judgment. At each branch point in her life, too many to mention, Babs found a way to take positive action to benefit others. She faced challenges with hope, never looking back. So you probably never heard about all these things. In her journals, Babs clearly states her desire to be a force for good, to make positive contributions in the world. She came to believe that love was the most powerful creative force. That all humans have a capacity for love, that this capacity can be tapped and developed by us all, expressed by us all to various degrees, and that the necessity for its expression extends to all humans. Her life was lived by these beliefs. Her presence in our lives and the love she offered was a magnificent gift. I think that might be all. But I wanted to say that your presence here brings her spirit and leaves it here. And that will be the legacy, the spirit that you carry with her, of her, everywhere you go. Thank you.